All right, everybody, we are live. This is Mark Joyner, and welcome to episode number 2 of the Mark Joyner Show. And man, I am so happy to have this guest on today. And it was very hard getting this young man. I call him young man now. To me, he's always a young man. I knew him when he was like this college kid. I know, right? And now he's turned into this enormous behemoth giant that cannot be unseen on the internet. You can't turn on the internet without seeing Russell Brunson's face. I don't know if Russell even needs an introduction, but I'm going to give you guys a very, very brief one just in case. So I'll tell you a little bit of the backstory here. So Russell and I met when he was trying to make money to pay off his college debts. And I tell you what, man, he had to convince his wife to spend $1,000 on a program that he couldn't afford that I was offering. And that started his online career. And I'm very grateful. He credits me as his first mentor, but I'm at a point now where I'm learning from him. And I want to tell you guys, if you are a teacher of any kind, the best blessing you could possibly have is a student that surpasses you. If you have any kind of humility, if you understand what life is really all about, that is one of the ultimate things that can happen, because what that means is you did your job well, partly, and it also means that you got an opportunity to learn something from someone. And if you've got a guy who not only surpassed you in certain ways, but is also humble and generous and wholesome the way Russell is, you are doubly and triply blessed. And that is what we have seen with Russell since his genesis in the online marketing community. When was it? Probably 1991, 92?
I don't even remember anymore. Well, when was the farewell package? That's like right when I got started.
About 91, yeah. So right as I was leaving, you were entering in.
I was jumping in.
You were jumping in. And Russell, I tell you what, I knew from the start, Russell had some stuff that a lot of people didn't have. First of all, he was an all-state wrestler. Now, a lot of you guys don't know this, but Johnny Hendricks, the first guy to really give GSP an ass whooping in UFC, fought Russell Brunson in an all-state wrestling tournament. Now, Russell didn't win that, but from what I hear, Russell should have won it. He's like, I see him gritting his teeth a little bit.
My hands are sweating. Like, let's call him up right now. I lost by 1 point to him, and to this day, I regret that, because it would have been so cool if I actually won that match.
I know, right? Well, fighting the guy and coming that close, and I mean, even though you should have won, that's bragging rights in itself. This is the guy who was the first guy to give GSP a real ass whooping, Johnny Hendricks, okay? Russell fought that dude. And wrestling is the single most challenging athletic program in school at all. So what that means is you come into the game with some mental toughness. Now, I saw Russell's curiosity, his humility, the mental toughness he had. I saw all of that in him early on, and I knew something amazing was going to happen. I had no idea the heights he would reach. Now, ClickFunnels is on the way to becoming a $1 billion company, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. And we've only got a certain amount of time because Russell is on a very, very tight time schedule. So what I'm going to do here is, after I give Russell a quick chance to say hello, I'm gonna rapid fire a bunch of questions at Russell. We'll see how much time we have for a little bit of Q&A after that. If you guys have questions, post them inside there. I've got a list of questions that other people have asked, but I'm going to shotgun blast Russell with a whole bunch of rapid fire questions first. But before all that, Russell, thank you so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
No worries, man. I am so grateful for you. It was funny. We were cleaning up something the other day, and I don't know if you remember this, but my wife and I just got married and bought your farewell package. And it was like a year later, because you kind of disappeared for a year, and then you came back and you did a phone call with me. And at the time, I had this tape recorder, and I recorded all my phone calls. And I remember I did this call with you, and I got done. I wrote on the tape, the cassette tape, I wrote $100 million call with Mark Joyner. And I need to find a tape player so I can actually listen to what we said way back in the day. But I saw it recently. I saw it again. And so like, it's really cool because I just remember you taking the time back then when I was nobody, just trying to figure out my way. And you were always so gracious with your time with me. And man, I listened for so much time. I'd plug in the farewell package in my head, and I'd hear you talking over and over again, and just different concepts and things that were just blowing my mind. And So many things that to this day I still use that all came initially from you. So I'm just grateful for you and you allowing me to hang out with you again, man. I love this. This is so much fun for me.
Well, I'm humbled and honored, man. And I would be, I would love to hear that tape actually. 'Cause I'm curious about what was said. We're going to have to find maybe one of the 5 cassette decks that exist in the universe now. They're all in the trash heap of history. All right. Dude, I have tons of rapid fire questions I just want to throw at you. And this is not going to be easy. I apologize in advance because these are going to be tough questions. I don't know how quickly we're going to be able to get through these, but I've got some really powerful ones that I think are going to deliver the most value. And you mentioned something there. You said, I took the time to spend with you. I always like to be as generous as I can with my time. And I know you do too. But as your life progresses, you got to be more and more strategic and more careful about that. Now that we have this platform where we can get this information out to a lot of people, I want to deliver as absolutely maximal value as we possibly can to the listeners of this call. So I have some very strategically designed questions. Before I jump into those, anything else you'd like to say?
I'm just excited to be hanging out with you and excited to be sharing. It's I think when I started, what are we, 15, 16 years ago when this whole thing started, like I didn't know it was even possible. But I believed it. I believed you. I watched you. I was like, Mark's doing it. I can figure this out. And hopefully if anyone's watching tonight, everyone's going to be at different levels. Some people are just getting started. Some have existing businesses, but I think a big piece of it is just believing that it's actually possible for you. Because I just believed you right out of the gate. I'm like, okay, I trust Mark. I believe him. I'm just going to do it. And now 15 years later, here we are. And I think for so many people, the techniques or the tactics aren't hard. It's just the belief in themselves is the hardest thing. So if I can give you guys anything, like I tell people all the time, like my job at ClickFunnels is to be the cheerleader to get people to believe in themselves. And so as you're listening to these things, there's going to be a lot of stuff that comes up from most people, like, oh, that'll work because he's Mark or because he's Russell or whatever. It's like, come on, if you would have seen 15 years ago, I was a little punk kid who was just begging Mark to get on the call. And I was in the forums, like geeking out, and like it's just time and belief and putting in the work. So anyway, hopefully that is a good lens for people to go through this, because I'm sure some things we'll talk about will be what may seem impossible, but I tell you what, I did not think what we've been doing with ClickFunnels is possible, and here we are. So you never know.
Well, first off, I think it's about 19 years actually, because if it was 2001, it's 2020 now. So, and I remember having a conversation with you early on. You were saying, how do I become a guru? And one of the things I told you was, you just decide that you're the guru, okay? The gurudom is a matter of perception. Now, there are a lot of people who misunderstand that, and they say, hey, I want to be a brain surgeon, so I'm just going to, chuck up a shingle on a door that says, I'm a brain surgeon. It's like, no. You have that means you internally have faith in yourself, but that doesn't mean you act like you're something that you're not, because somebody who is a real teacher, a real guru, somebody who's really mastered anything understands that the learnings never end, right? And once you get to that point where you think you've got it all figured out, I guarantee you stagnation is the very, very next phase. So I'm going to dive right into these questions, man. And I'm going to start out with I'm going to start out on a slightly negative one, and then we're going to get into more positive ones.
All right.
Okay. So we'll start with, so if you just rapid fire, if you could think off the top of your head, the 3 biggest blunders you have made along the way. And I got about 7 of these rapid fire questions like this I want to go through. So I'm putting you under time pressure. Biggest blunders, what would they be?
From like the beginning of time, or just like since ClickFunnels time, or how far back are we talking?
Well, you know what? Up to you, because all of these lessons are relevant. The lessons that you learned early in life mattered to you later on in ClickFunnels as well. And you could say ClickFunnels earlier on in your life, whatever you think is appropriate.
Okay. All right. So 3 biggest blunders. I would say the first one, I think most entrepreneurs have this initially, is because I think most of us get started because like we want to make money. Like that's the thing. And so for the first couple of years of me being in this business, a lot of it was chasing like, where's the money at? It's over here. It's over here. It's over. And like I kept chasing money. And I don't know if you probably don't remember this, but one of the big profound things you told me, because this is like the same time that Google AdSense was becoming this thing, and friends that were throwing up these crappy little AdSense sites where you just click on them like crazy, and people were making crazy money doing that, and I was like trying to figure those out. And something, I don't know if you said it verbally to me or if it's because I was listening to you so often, but you kept talking about like focus on the fundamentals, build the list, build the list, build the list. And I was like, but everyone's making money over here clicking on ads on garbage sites. Like, and you just kept drilling my head, like, focus on a list, focus on a list, focus on a list. And so eventually I started focusing on that thing. And then what was interesting is that led to the list of people. And then it started listening to, like, how do you act? Like, what do the people want? It was less about like what I wanted to create or what I wanted to, like, how I want to make money, but it was more like these people are on my list. What do they actually want? How can I serve them? Like, what are the things I needed to create? Who do I need to become? Like, what are those things? And so I think the biggest blunder was chasing money and chasing, the shiny object. And the resolution of that was really starting to understand that the business is just people. And it's like, how do we serve these people? I talk about all the time, like, I feel like business is a calling. I believe it's from God. Some people believe it's from whatever, but it's a calling. You're called to serve a group of people. And it's like, when you look at it from that lens, it's like, okay, how do I serve this group? What do I need to do? And when you do that and you shift to that, like, that's when money starts coming. So that'd be the first blunder that I think that, took me 2 or 3 years to figure through. Another one I think is I spent a lot of time for a while, like, there's like the strategy of business and the tactics, and I geeked out on the tactics so much. So I was doing tactical things that, like, would get me little pops of money or pops of cat, or things like that, or a little bit of traffic or whatever it was. But it wasn't until I started stepping back and started trying to think more strategically, which is a hard thing for a lot of us entrepreneurs because it's not as fast. It's slower. But when you strategically put things together and connect things, that's when the big stuff starts coming. In fact, I don't know if you remember this. This is another funny thing on the journey. It was a podcast interview I did with you probably 7 or 8 years ago. And I think I asked you a question specifically about that. And you said, the biggest problem you have right now, Russell, is you're focusing too much on the tactics. And I was like, what is he talking about? I didn't even know. And then I just stepped back and like, I think first I got, at first maybe a little offended or like, what are you talking about? Doing really good. And then I really internalized that, like, okay, what does that mean? Like, what's the difference between strategy and tactics? And let me understand that. And then it's like, okay, let me look at these, instead of looking at it from this tactical lens, up close, like, how do I step back and sort of at a bigger point? And that's where ClickFunnels was born from, was us stepping back. And part of it happened because we went through some hard times in the business where it's like we had to refigure things out, and we didn't have time to, like, we were out of money to goof around. And it was like, okay, we got to make the right move. Let's think about this before we just jump. That's probably number 2. And then number 3 is I think this is one that's just a lot of my lens right now is I didn't understand advertising laws for a long time. And I think, now we have in-house legal attorneys, and we've got everything we write goes through, everything I publish, like, literally has to go through an attorney first to make sure I'm saying, and, like, I wish I would have understood that from the very beginning, because there's so many things that us as a marketplace are doing that they're illegal that we don't even know. We think that, like, oh, because we got this person's success story, I can tell that success story. And it's like, even if that thing is true, you can't just tell that story. Like, there's advertising laws that dictate that. And I think in the last 2 years is where I've really started to understand that and respect that. And first, as marketers, we hate all the rules and regulations. Then you start respecting it, and then it actually makes you a better marketer, a better business person. And I think you can serve people better when you start understanding those things. And so I think that's something I'm going to be talking a lot more to our community as a whole about, just because I'm starting to understand it so much better. And there's so many people that are having success, but they're doing it, saying things that they shouldn't be and they can't be saying. So those are probably the biggest, 3 big blunders for me.
Well, I tell you what, man, if this were any other guest, I would be commenting back and forth, and I have a lot to say about everything that you just said. Could not agree more with all those things you said. But because we have such limited time, and because you are such an extraordinary phenomenon right now, I'm going to use this time instead to shut up and extract more information out of you, because there's so many good lessons that we can get from you. Next 3 I have are, now this is going to be very interesting. And this is one I'm probably the most curious about. The 3 most significant / pivotal strategic moves or decisions that you have made since the inception of ClickFunnels.
Ooh. Oh man, these are good. Okay. The first one is definitely easy. The first one. So my business partner is Todd Dickerson. He's my co-founder, and he's the brains that built ClickFunnels. I always tell people I'm the dancing monkey on stage talking about it. He's the guy who, like, got his hands dirty because I can't code. Like, in fact, the joke as he was building it was like, if I can make something so simple that Russell can use it, like, the rest of the world's going to love this thing. And so initially, like when we, like Todd worked for me for a long time and we did projects together, and he lives in Atlanta, Georgia, and he fly to Boise about once or twice a year, and we'd sit down and brainstorm ideas. And I remember the time we came out and we talked about building ClickFunnels. I was like, I've tried to build, something like this before. I think it wasn't a unique idea. I think everybody had tried to build it at one point. Like let's build software that makes this whole funnel thing easy. Like everyone had that idea. It wasn't unique.
Right.
And Todd was like, we should build it. I'm like, okay, I've tried it before. It didn't work. Like everyone's tried it. But he's like, no, I think I can do it. And so we sat down for a week in front of a whiteboard and mapped out like what the dream would be, like the vision, like we could have all these things. And I remember after the week was done, I was driving him back to the airport. And as we got to like I was going to drop him off, he kind of stopped for a second and said, hey, if we're going to do this project together or this project, I don't want to do it as your employee. I want to be your partner. And I remember like that was the moment where it's just like, but I'm the entrepreneur. I'm the one that's risked all, I like the ego was just there. And I had all this fear and all these anxiety, all these things that were just like, And as I'm sitting there, like I literally in that moment made the second best decision in my life outside of marrying my wife. And it was like, I said, let's do it. And I said, yes. And like that little shift from like, I'm the guy to like, let's do this together meant everything. And he went home and built ClickFunnels. And he has been to this day, the most amazing business partner anyone could ever dreamt of. And so I think that's the big thing is that, the strategy of getting out of your own ego and being okay with building a team and realizing you don't have to be the person. I was talking about this at Funnel Hacking Live. I think one of the big things that entrepreneurs do is we're going on this journey and we get stuck and we're like, how do I do this thing? We get into this procrastination mode of trying to learn how to do things. And the question we should be asking ourselves is like who already knows how to do this thing? And then we start assembling our dream team. And if you look at any good movie series, right? Like the Avengers, you got Nick Fury comes in, assembles a dream team. They go and take out Thanos. You got Justice League. Like every good movie, Ocean's 12, Ocean's 11, like there's always a person comes in, build the dream team, and then they go attack this thing. And I think most entrepreneurs have so much ego and pride that they don't do that. And man, looking back, it was like, that was the first time I said, okay, I'm gonna have a partner. And we brought in other partners. And now like, one of the biggest reasons why I've been able to grow is because I have this amazing team of people around me who have equity in the company, who like they're up tonight working just like I am because like they care and they love it. And it's like, they're vested in it. And I think that was probably if I would have said no to that, nothing would have happened, like it would have been a completely different landscape. So
right. Todd wouldn't have been vested into the whole program the way he is now, but now he's super motivated because he knows that every bit of effort he puts into it, he's going to get, an outsized return way beyond what he would have received had he just been an employee. Okay. Yeah. Beautiful. All right. What's number 2 then?
Number 2. So the strategic, I'm trying to explain it right. Like when we first launched ClickFunnels, I didn't know how, like I had an idea. Like I remember like we created like the way I thought we were going to sell it. Like it was a funnel. I think I've actually sent you a video about this, but we had a funnel and like we launched it. I was like, in my mind, I'm like, we're gonna have 10,000 customers the first month. And we launched it and it was it bombed. Like the funnel didn't convert. A couple of affiliates promoted and didn't convert. So they all stopped. It was just like, we spent a year of our life creating this thing. It was just like, and I remember this.
And
you've watched me before this because like, I didn't know what I was going to do for a long time. Like I was like, we were launching a new offer every quarter for 5 or 6 or 7 years. Cause I didn't know what to like, I was just doing thing after thing. And so that was the pattern is cause I didn't know how to run a business or, all these things. And this was going to be the thing we thought, and we launched it and nothing happened. And then it was like, I need to go launch something else. And I was like, I can't. Cause like we put so much time into this. And I remember Todd said something to me. He's like, we have to focus on this for a year just to prove to like everybody that this is actually a real thing. And, and that meant like we had to just like all in. And so we had this point where it's like, we can shift to another offer real quick and make money to like keep us all afloat, or we can just burn the bridges. And so we had a supplement company we got rid of. We shut down like all these side projects. We just like turned them all off. Like, and it was like revenue's like flying to the bottom, but like we have to focus. And we launched like 4 or 5 or 6 different versions of the funnel. None of them worked. And it wasn't until I got asked to speak at an event, and they wanted me to do a presentation to sell ClickFunnels. And I was like, I've been trying to sell ClickFunnels. Nobody's buying it. And the promoter was like, well, you need to make $1,000 version of it. I'm like, I have a free trial. I can't get people to take the free trial. And so he basically, he's like, you're on the sales page. You have to speak. And so 2 days before the event, I was trying to think of like, what's the messaging? How am I going to sell this? And I created the first version of the webinar to sell ClickFunnels. Went to this event. I stood on stage and I delivered this presentation. And it was like I figured out. I didn't realize it until I did the presentation, but I got the messaging right. And as soon as I did that, it was crazy because I think like 40% of the room who were in the room like ran the back and bought. And I was like, oh my gosh, like we got the messaging right. And I remember going to dinner that night with Todd and a couple of the partners at the time. And I was like, you guys, just so you know, like that was it. And like, what do you mean? I'm like, that's the message. Like, do you see how people rant? Like, I've never had people run to the back and like, we got the messaging right. Like, it's game over. And what normally would have happened in my prior life is like, cool, we made a bunch of money. I would have like went to the next offer. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna do that webinar at least once a week, every week for a year. And I ended up doing it a lot more than that. I mean, I was doing it 2 or 3 times a day sometimes. But we got back home. I was calling everybody I knew. We were buying ads, like everything to this webinar. And I did that webinar every single day. And like webinar would happen. I do the webinar, get the sales day, look at the questions. We go back to read them, and then we tweak the webinar, do it again, tweak the webinar, do it again, tweak it, do it again. I think I did that webinar live. Ended up being like 70 or 80 times the first year live. And people are like, why didn't you automate it? And I'm like, no. Like, this is my baby. I'm not automating. I need to perfect this message. I need to understand every concern, every problem, everything. And we focused on that. And that's like that hardcore focus on like mastering the messaging of it was huge. I think so many people like they try something and they step back, and it's like, that's why things don't scale, because like you have a good message, but it's funny because I always tell people, if you can get 10% of people to buy on your webinar, it's $1 million a year business. If you get a little lower than that, you're a 6-figure business, but you go from 10% to 15%, which seems like a small incremental change. And that's the difference between $1 million a year business to $100 million business, like 5% increase in conversion. And that's so right. Because I did that presentation 70 whatever times in a row, we mastered it. And so we had the messaging right. And so that was the first part. And the second part was the funnel structure. This is where I made a video for you, but because the first time we tried to launch ClickFunnels was just like sign up for the trial. Right. And it was interesting because like it was hard. I couldn't afford to pay ads for the trial. I couldn't go negative. The whole affiliates wouldn't promote. It was hard. Then we had the $1,000 webinar that, they got a year worth of ClickFunnels. We promoted that and we made a bunch of cash, but it was like, there was no cash flow. So it was kind of this like, I was back in like in a launch model, which we didn't like that either. And like the winning combination, what we figured out was we'd have someone register for the webinar. On the thank you page, we'd say, hey, the webinar is going to be, a day or two. Go get a free ClickFunnels account and try it out, just so that when you come to the webinar, it'll make sense. And so people go get a free trial, and the webinar would happen, which would train the people who already had a trial, and hopefully they would retain longer, and then a percentage of those people would buy the $1,000 version. And so that combination was like, that's when it was like, it's on like Donkey Kong, and we started going crazy. And after 12 months, we ended up having 10,000 members that joined. 2,500 had paid the $1,000 cash, and the other 7,500 were people who had stuck from the thank you page. And that was year number one. And then it was just, it gave us the ability where we could spend money to acquire customers because the $1,000 thing, but it was building up this recurring income at the same time. And it just, that was what took it from the ground into liftoff. So mastering the message and mastering like the funnel was probably the second big strategic thing.
What I really love about that is how you're training people to see what the monthly cost would be when they sign up for the trial. And then when you give them that big offer at the end, stacked with all those other things, it becomes so irresistible because you have trained the mind to perceive it a particular way. And then boom, it's a huge pattern interrupt with the way you do it. Now, I would love to see what your latest and greatest version of the webinar is. I've seen a couple versions of it, but I want to know, I think I asked you this before. I was like, man, show me what like the ultimate version of it was, because you're automating it now, right?
Yeah.
Oh, dude. See, anybody watching this, if you don't go find out the automated version of that, and by the way, I'm gonna give you guys a banner that you guys can look at. I think a place where you can see this is go to this URL here. This is the basic ClickFunnels website. If you sign up for the 2-week trial there, you will probably be shuttled in to watch the webinar.
You'll start seeing the ads for the webinar. They'll show up.
One way or another, they're going to get you to watch that damn webinar. If you guys go to simplerg.com/ClickFunnels free, start the 2-week free trial. If for nothing else, just to see how Russell structures this, you need to do it. Now, disclosure, my company uses ClickFunnels now. I've been involved in 3 other companies before Russell started ClickFunnels that were trying to build, the automated WYSIWYG funnel building. None of them did the job very well. We use ClickFunnels now because what they built is so damn good. I'm like, it doesn't make any sense. And by the way, there's a classic thing, and I'm going to say this very quick before I shut up and get back into questions for Russell, but there's a very classic business lesson a lot of people don't understand, and there is a conundrum between build or buy. And the build or buy conundrum is this. If you take your own internal resources and you build something, you got to understand that that's energy, that's time, that's assets that you could be committing to growth, right? If you can take a little bit of money and buy a solution that's already pre-made, often, even though it's expensive, it makes way more sense, because I can guarantee you the time, energy, and money that it would take you to build your own ClickFunnels version would be astronomically higher than what it would cost for a ClickFunnels subscription. So when you have the choice between build or buy, you almost always buy unless there's nothing out there in the marketplace that gets the job done well. And by the way, I've tried all these other funnel builders. A lot of them claim to be better. Well, I'll tell you 2 more things about this, okay? Russell's is better, okay? And 2, the culture of the company is proven to be stable over a long, long period of time. I see a lot of companies coming out now with like, oh, we're trying to be better than ClickFunnels. And I'm like, yeah, this is coming from the same dudes that started 20 other companies that lasted 6 months and disappeared, right?
They sell for like lifetime access for $27. And I'm like, oh,
yeah, right.
Like how much I spent on customer support alone. It's like, there's no way you can survive.
Yeah, there's no way you're going to compete with Russell. I mean, good luck to all those guys. Competition is fair and everything, but you think you're going to compete with this dude? Sorry, I wouldn't compete with you in this marketplace. No way, man. You got such a huge foothold. All right, what would be the 3rd most significant strategic move?
Oh, there's a couple different directions I could go on this one. Can I give 2 halves?
Please, I love it. I love it.
So one half is when we launched ClickFunnels, it wasn't just that we were going to build a software company. In fact, it was probably a month or 2 before we came out with ClickFunnels. I went with I don't know if you know David Fry, but David's one of my mentors, and
I love David.
His wife's actually my second aunt. So anyway.
Oh wow!
When he was dating his now wife, I was like a little snot-nosed kid running around at my grandma's house. And anyway, so
he's my buddy. I love David. He's my buddy. He's a great guy.
Yeah, he's amazing. And we were at this network marketing convention, and I remember we were there, and the company was a software company. And we're sitting there with like 5,000 people in the room, and all the people are coming on stage and they're crying and all this stuff. And I'm just kind of confused, like this doesn't make any sense. And I remember he leaned over to me after like 2 days of watching this. And he said, "You see what they're doing?" I'm like, "No, I have no idea what's happening. I'm so confused." He's like, "They're not selling software, so they built a community." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, like that's the thing. They have this community, they have a culture." And so when we started building ClickFunnels, it was like that mindset, like how do we build a culture? So it's not just like a software. It's like I want to build something where people feel part of it. Like it's not Russell's company. If it's Russell's company, they'll go to whoever's the cheapest, whoever's got the new feature. But if it's their company, if it's their culture, that shifts everything. And so we started this whole thing from day one of like, we're funnel hackers. This is our movement. This is what we believe in. This is what we, and 2 weeks ago we had our funnel hacking live. We had 4,500 people in a room, and people were going crazy. We got people with like ClickFunnels tattooed on their arms, like people wearing custom funnels on, and we had people come on stage crying, and like I'm looking out, and I'm like 6 years ago, David Fry pointed out to me, and like that became a big piece of it. So I think it was not just having this as a software product, but how we make this as a movement where it's bigger than that. So that was one big strategic thing that I think a lot of people miss. And then the second one is, I think, again, it comes back to like us as marketers. We get so excited about the next thing, like what's the next offer we're going to create and the thing like that. And I remember after the first year, ClickFunnels grew to a certain point, and then I'm like, I want to create something new, even though like the market didn't necessarily need something new, but like I wanted to do something else. And And so what I started doing is I realized like this funnel is kind of in the middle of my value ladder, right? The webinar funnel, and tons of people had seen it. It was starting to fatigue a little bit. And that point, like we'd done over $10 million in sales. That's when we launched the second funnel to bring people in ClickFunnels. That's when basically I wrote the .com secrets book, and that became a book funnel. And people come in, they buy the book, they go through the book funnel, and then at the end of the book funnel, we just send them up into the webinar. And
you can see that funnel right there, by the way. The link's up there for that.
Oh, very cool.
You guys should check that out, by the way. That's another very, very interesting thing. You guys need to funnel hack what the guy who teaches funnel hacking does, because this dude has mastered this stuff. And that funnel is sick. It is sick. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah. Well, so I'll tell you a story that kind of shows why this is so powerful. About but a year and a half, 2 years into ClickFunnels, we started getting all the calls, right? This is when the VCs and all the people like start noticing you, and they're like, hey, we want to be part of your journey. Like, and I just like, I have no desire to do any of that. And then one time some guys like, we're in Boise today. Can we meet with you? I'm like, okay, like, sure, let's go to lunch. And turns out they were in San Francisco. They jumped in a private plane, flew in, and then like drove off. It's like, hey, and like, where are you guys staying? Like, well, we just flew in. I'm like, when? Like, just right. Like, it was a whole thing that someone tricked me thinking like they were right there. So I went to lunch with these guys, and they started asking me like, all the VC questions, like, well, how much does it cost to acquire a ClickFunnels customer? And I was like, well, if we drive ads to the homepage, it's like, I can't remember the time, $150 to acquire a customer. And the guy starts getting all excited, and he's like, okay, so if we were to give you like $40 million in funding, he was doing the math, like how many customers that would equal and all sorts of stuff. And he's getting all excited. And I was like, wait. I was like, we actually turned those ads off. And he's like, what? Why would you do that? Like, that's a great, cost to acquire a customer in the Bay or whatever. And I'm like, because like, I'm bootstrapping this thing. Like, I'm paying for these customers out of my pocket. If I'm paying $150 for a trial, like I'm going to be broke in like a week and a half. And so I said, but instead what we did is we create these book funnels where someone comes in, they buy a book. And I said, on average, we spend about $20 in Facebook ads to sell a book. But then there's a funnel, right? We upsell the audiobook, and there's a course, and there's a couple different products in the funnel. And so we spend $20 to sell a book, but we make $40 in the book funnel. So I net $20 cash in my pocket. And then I tell those people, after you read this book, you understand the strategy of funnels. Here's how you actually, like, now you need to use ClickFunnels. I said, technically, all of our customers actually pay us $20 before we introduce them to ClickFunnels.
And this is the other book funnel, by the way, guys, if you guys want to check that out. Yeah. So, I mean, and both of these are pretty sick, because the first one was .com secrets and then expert secrets.
And but then anyway, traffic secrets is coming out in like a month. So that's the third one.
And I'm gonna be at that event. Can I say that? Can I say it?
Yes.
Can I say it?
That'd be so
yeah. Oh, Russell is holding this awesome live event. He invited a small group of speakers. Only 200 people are going to be there in the audience, and he's going to be broadcasting this live all over the world. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be one of the speakers. I was very flattered and grateful that Russell invited me to be part of this. This is going to be sick. Russell is going to spread this thing all over the place. It's going to be madness. Everything that Russell has put on since, over the last few years, everything you've done has just been nuts, but it's been getting better and better and better. I'm so excited to see what you do with this one, because I'm like, I have a feeling this is going to kind of eclipse any of the past campaigns you've ever done. I get a little feeling in my gut.
I'm so excited for it. It's like, as I'm writing the book, all I can think about is how we're going to sell the book. Like, this is going to be so much fun.
Yeah. Anyway. Oh, dude, that's awesome. That's awesome.
So fun. But what's crazy was I'm sitting there at that lunch with the VC, and I'm telling this stuff, and he doesn't understand the first time. That I explained 3 or 4 times, and finally I remember he said something really profound. He said, if what you're telling me is true, this will change business forever. And I was like, that's the whole thing. Like, any other company that's grown, like a software company that's grown to the size we have, all of them have taken on money. Like, I can't find any that didn't. Maybe a couple, but for the most part, they all took on money to grow. And I was like, instead of bringing on cash to grow, like, you just use a funnel and it finances itself the whole way. And so I think that's a big strategic thing, is like, we create these, like, we drink our own Kool-Aid. Like, I literally today was working my funnel team on our next funnel for next campaign to bring more customers in for free that we can then bring into ClickFunnels, So I think that's another big piece, is just understanding, like, you can grow a company without taking on cash. It's just understanding this funnel game where your customers finance the growth. And I think that's the best way to do it. So anyway.
Well, I got to tell you what, for me personally, my experience in the VC world and in the acquisition world and all of that, back in the early days of online marketing, before you were still in college, but before the first dot-com bubble burst, I'll just give you guys one example of one of the ugly things I saw. Every company that I've ever started was bootstrapped, but we had some of the same things. We had people coming in trying to acquire stuff. I started the second pay-per-click search engine. This was while Google was still in college. I started the second pay-per-click search engine. I want to be very careful about how I phrase this here. Let's just say around that same time, there was a group of people who attempted to acquire one of my companies, and through some shady, reverse merger, back end, crazy deal, these guys basically bamboozled us out of everything. And it turned out that a lot of the guys who were involved in that ended up going to jail for stock fraud later. And that kind of thing, by the way, people don't understand, this is common. So, not only, are the VC guys who are like the legit VC guys, those guys are sharks too, but there's a layer underneath those guys who are like straight criminal sharks as well. So, you have to be extremely careful when you're swimming in that world. And this is why, for me, I don't want to accept outside funding for anything. I want to bootstrap everything. I want to surround myself around people who are as motivated as I am so that I can grow it on, by pulling our own selves up by our own bootstraps. And then we're going to own everything. We're going to get all the profit. And we don't have to worry about some VC jerk off telling us how to run the business when they don't really understand, So
something cool. I just bought bootstrap.com, and my next book is going to be called bootstrap.com. So anyway,
I love it.
We shot like 5 times. I'm like, I'm so excited right now.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Oh, okay. So after the trilogy, you're starting a whole new thing.
Yeah, and this is going to be, because the trilogy's all been like how-to books. This one's not going to be how-to book. This is going to be like the story of like, and what's crazy, ClickFunnels was built remote, like all of our teams remote. So almost every conversation has happened on Boxer. So we have recordings of every important conversation in ClickFunnels. So I'm getting them all like downloaded and transcribed right now. So it's going to be like, this is actually what Russell said. In fact, you could like listen to like the conversations. Anyway, I'm excited. That's going to be my next project starting in about a year from now.
Beautiful. All right. I might have to skip a couple of these. All right. So here's one.
I'm having fun. I'm feeling good. So we can keep going. Don't worry.
All right. Awesome. Well, you're always super energetic, man. I tell you, every time I talk to Russell, I get more energized. I'm generally a pretty energetic guy, but I just vibe because Russell's got this just amazing, he effervesces energy. All right. So what would you say are the 3 biggest barriers or bottlenecks for growth in businesses right now?
In my specific business or just businesses as a whole?
Well, either one. You pick either one.
Interesting. So 3 biggest bottlenecks for growth. I think this may be a little early, but I think one of the biggest things people are going to see right now, we've been in this amazing season where advertising has been easy. Like when I first got started online, like grateful for you, because I don't know how you guys even figured it out back in the day. Like we were building lists and there was no Facebook. There was like, Google wasn't really there the way, like, and so like I was lucky to hear like your audios on viral marketing, and like we were building these viral sites to acquire customers and email addresses. And like I remember listening to the farewell package and you talking about all the crazy stuff you guys would do to build lists. So it got my mind thinking like that. But
yeah, we had to get super creative.
Oh yeah. No one thinks like that anymore. So what happened is like Facebook came out, it's easy. Everyone's like in business and it's been like that for the last decade. And so like business has been so simple. And I don't think it's going to last that much longer. I think either some government regulation is going to happen or they're just going to do what Google did where they start shifting away from smaller brands and just, kind of elbow us out and go after bigger companies. And I think that, in fact, that's a big reason why I wrote the Traffic Secrets book. Like hopefully you guys all have a chance to read it when it comes out, but it's very much not tactical. Like here's how to run a Facebook ad. Like I don't show the Facebook editor once. Like it's very much like a strategic book. Like how do you start thinking differently? Because when Zuckerberg comes, and we always joke, it was probably because I was writing the book right when Avengers Endgame came out, and Thanos, we just the Thanos snap, and like half the world disappears. We always talk about Zuckerberg. Like we nicknamed in the office Zanos, and like Zanos is going to snap his finger, and half the entrepreneurs' businesses will disappear. And we're seeing. I've had probably 5 or 6 people that are friends in the last week alone who's got Facebook ads shut down, and I don't like. It's going to be coming. And so like, I think the biggest thing is that people have had it really good and really easy because they've just been like, I'd run Facebook ads, or I run Google ads, or they're just doing the basics. They're simple. It's going to get harder. And so I think it's time for all of us to start resharpening our marketing mind. Like in the Traffic Secrets book, I have a whole chapter on integration marketing. I'm like, I learned this from my mentor, Mark Joyner. Like, you guys need to start learning this stuff. And like, just all these different things that people haven't had to learn. I think that's, I'm definitely looking at it. And I keep giving you so much credit because so much of my mindset initially was based on your teachings. But like, we spend so much effort right now focusing on list building because I know that it's going to get harder to build a list. Like right now, we average about, from the ClickFunnels.com site, we get about 1,500 leads, like opt-ins a day. And then from my other funnels, we get about 3,000 to 4,000 opt-ins a day. So we get almost 5,000 people a day opting in. And that's our focal point. Because I'm like, I'm going to keep building these lists like crazy because someday these other things might disappear or get harder or more expensive. And I'm going to have these lists and I'll be able to weather the storm where a lot of people are not going to be able to because they're not focusing on list building and building relationships with those lists. They're just out there buying Facebook ads because it's easy. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I'm fearful for. I mean, myself, I'm like doubling down on. I think other people need to as well.
I want to interject really quick here about something because it's funny you bring this up because this is something I've been talking about a lot. So I've been doing a lot more public speaking lately. And one of the things that I've been talking about is exactly this. And I want to show everybody a little bit of an interesting phenomenon. And Russell, I think you'll appreciate this. So if you guys remember Chris Anderson writing the book about the long tail, right? And if you look at if this is the rank of, the unit numbers sold of any particular, let's say, imagine you take Amazon's entire marketplace, right? This is the number of units sold, and this is the rank, right? So the number one selling book is going to outsell the number two selling book by an order of magnitude at least, right? So it's like the inverse of an exponential growth curve. So Chris Anderson's whole theory about the long tail was that because automation is making everything so easy, was that, traditionally people used to focus all their energy in here because this is where all the money was. But now because of all, the improvements we have in supply chain technology and deliveries, there's so much money in the long tail of the graph. And if you can have an inventory of billions and billions and billions of units, that represents enormous economic potential. But here's what happened. The exact opposite of what Chris Anderson predicted is the reality of what happened. See, Facebook, YouTube, all of these platforms, they built themselves on our backs, okay? We were the ones that created all of the content so that these guys could be so big, and now we're the eyeballs. But guess who they care about now? If you take this out and you take the same graph and you speak in terms of ad spending, they only care about this portion of the graph. Why? While this represents a lot of economic potential, it also represents an enormous pain in the ass for the company that has to manage it.
Customers.
And they hate the customers. And this is why when you're on Facebook and we're on YouTube now, your ads are getting shut down algorithmically, or they're getting shut down by some, low-level employee that doesn't really understand what's going on, and they don't give you any explanation. And I've had, and Russell, you probably heard so many stories like this. People wake up in the morning and then they have this business, it's going great guns, and they're like, they're saying to their wives, this is it, we've made it, and then the next day they wake up, and then because something happened algorithmically in Facebook, they completely get shut down, that their lives are basically shattered as a result of that. So unless you're here in terms of ad spend, you don't get their attention. They're not going to explain to you why they shut you down. And this is why we started this thing called Integration Marketing Society. So you talked about integration marketing. So we're building Integration Marketing Society so people can band together and buttress ourselves against the threat of this, right? That's what that whole thing is all about. So I want to have another conversation with you about that another time, because I think that there's a lot of potential synergy there. I'm glad you're seeing that same thing. So what would you say is the number 2 and 3 bottlenecks now then?
Let's see. So definitely traffic's the biggest one. I think for a lot of I think that there's, and I don't know how, like, historically how this all works, but it's like, in advertising is all about like the pattern interrupt, right? Like we're used to seeing stuff happening, and then like the thing that catches our attention, like it interrupts, right? And it used to be back, when we first got started, like you'd figure out a pattern interrupt, and that thing would last for months or years before people kind of caught on and figured it out. And now it's tough because like we come out with a new pattern interrupt, we post on Instagram, and within like 15 minutes, there's 800 other people doing the exact same post. They just say, see, it worked for us, it must work for me, right? And they start doing it. And it's like, it's interesting because it's so easy now to clone and to copy and things like that. And so I think for people who are truly trying to like to grow companies and serve at a different level and like be creatives, like being creative is harder. And I think that it takes, I don't know what exactly how to phrase it right, but it's like I think that the Me Too stuff's gonna get worse and worse because some people copying, right? Like, so it's like you gotta get better at the creation and better at creative and better at like figuring out how to break the pattern and stay in front of it all the time, because it's crazy how fast things get knocked off now. We have an ad, or we have a campaign or something that's working, and it's crazy. In fact, I had this conversation with Dean Graciosi, who's become a dear friend. And Dean ran infomercials for a year. And he said that he would record a show, an infomercial, and the lifespan was like 18 months. Every 18 months, he had to record a new show. Then he came on the internet, and he's like, I started doing my ads, and I would launch them on Facebook or Instagram. He's like, they'd be killing it for a day and a half, 2 days, and they're gone. And he's like, what? And like they couldn't figure it out. And he basically came back and started testing a bunch of stuff. He said the biggest thing he figured out is like he has to create tons of creative. And I said, well, how much? Like 1 ad a week, 2 ads a week? He's like, no. He's like, I carry my phone everywhere I go, like 2 to 3 ads a day minimum. Like he's walking around like with his book, like here's an ad here. And he walks to his daughter's soccer game, he's doing an ad there. And then he's like in the elevator, doing an ad there, and like just tons and tons and tons and tons of creative, and like figure out how to like break the pattern, how to grab people's attention. And so it's like those people who aren't willing to, like, if you don't love your thing enough to like, I got to create a lot more creative, it's gonna be hard because people just keep knocking you off. You know what I mean? And so I think that's a big part for us. We used to spend so much time, I don't know, like being slow on creating ads and stuff. Now it's like, it's more like, how do we stay in front of that curve and get excited where the art isn't in like creating the next product or the next campaign or the next funnel. The art becomes like, what's a new way I can sell the thing I already have? And it's that big shift. In fact, in our company, I kind of like building funnels. I'm a little obsessed with it. And so for a long time, for 4 or 5 years, the way we kept growing is I create a new funnel and like, and the tough thing is it takes, I don't know, it's just hard to keep doing that, because then every time you create a new funnel, you create the new ads, and it's a lot more work and effort. Whereas now it's like we shifted our focus to like less funnels but more creative for every funnel, and it's just a different mindset shift. And so I don't know, that's not super clear the way it came out, but it's one of the big problems I'm seeing that we're having is ad fatigue. It burns out super fast if you're not in front of just like creation, always trying to figure out different ways to break the pattern. You're gonna get left behind really, really quickly, because the copycats, there's so many of now that even if you are copying the good pattern, like the diminishing return hits so fast,
Well, the problem is people also don't know how to copy, right? For me, there's like 3 levels of copying. One is straight out plagiarism, right? And then the next one is people take your surface stuff and they change a few words and then they pop that up, right? Which to me is just as dumb and is just as shady, right? Because first of all, changing a couple words doesn't make sense when you're dealing with a completely different product. Right. There are even a lot of copyrights. It's so many different things are different. Right. I mean, this is where you really got to get into the real understanding of, when you're funnel hacking something or you're modeling something, what you have to understand is the psychological structure behind it. And this is what breakthrough advertising, the classic Eugene Schwartz book that everybody should be reading. I mean, I had to read that probably about 5 times before it finally sunk in. Holy crap. I didn't really understand it at first. I was like, oh, okay, it's interesting. But then when it finally clicked, and his whole idea, I mean, it's basically, based on the notion that you've got to analyze, how to connect your product with the market forces that already exist. And every product in every market is going to have a different way of connecting that. And you can't copy that from someone. The only way to get that correctly, to have a real big legitimate breakthrough in the business, is through the process of analysis, right? And that's the core idea of, I mean, there's so many different nuggets of wisdom from breakthrough advertising. But that's the core thing that people had better get good at, because I tell you what, if they don't, here's what's going to happen. It's going to become like the quants in the trading game, right? The quants are like, hey, let's see who can shave a quarter of a millisecond off, the trading time on the stock market, right? Well, if the marketing world becomes like that, I mean, good luck to you unless you're the guy with the best quants. The only other way to compete then is to train your creative mind to come up with creative answers. And as you remember from the farewell package, there are so many ways to do that. There's so many out of the box ways. You don't have to do things the same way everyone else is doing, but everybody's getting lazy now because they see the quick way to get it done. But I think what's going to happen to those people is going to happen. It's going to be what happened to the people early on in the early internet era, when the guys got like the big quick SEO money. Because remember, I was telling you, hey man, don't do the AdSense. Don't go too far down that AdSense rabbit hole. Build your list, right? Well, remember all those guys who were killing it with AdSense, and then we're boom, Thanos snapped his fingers, and then all their money was gone, right? That's going to happen to everybody who doesn't build their creative muscle.
100%. Yeah.
Okay. Third thing.
All right. So, I think the reason why a lot of people is they're trying to grow their company, they hit these ceilings, and I struggled with this. Like I got stuck between $1 and $3 million a year for like a decade. Like I couldn't break that ceiling no matter how hard I did. And what I realized as we launched ClickFunnels, the first phase of the business was like, there's like the hyperactive cut, like the first set of customers, which are the easy ones, right? Like they get it. They're the early adopters. They figure stuff out. And those are like the customers that are already there. They're just waiting for you to go and grab them. And I think most companies, that's as far as they ever get. In fact, I've been geeking out on the book, Crossing the Chasm right now. And there's like the 5 different phases, right? And it's like the innovators are the first ones. And I think that's where most people's businesses get to the innovators. And that's where they stop, right? And then the second phase is like the early adopters. But these people aren't like, you have to start the second phase. You have to learn how to like create a customer, right? Like when we first launched ClickFunnels, like the internet marketers who knew what funnels were like, sweet, I'm in. And they came in, they got ClickFunnels early adopters, right? But then after that was done, like we ran out. It was like being in a Ferrari on a dead end road. Like we ran out of road, and all of a sudden we're like, hey, we got all the internet marketers. Like, oh crap, now what? And it was like, okay, now we have to create customers. Like we have to change our messaging, create our front end products. Like they do things so that when someone comes, they don't come with the desire ahead of time, but they listen to the message, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I need a funnel. Like if you look at even strategically, the .com secrets book was to get the early adopters, people who understood funnels were like, here's my strategy of funnels. We got them in. And then expert secrets was like, hey, do you have talent? Like, do you have ideas or advice or things you can make money with, right? That you can share your advice. Like and people are like, oh yeah, I do. It's like, cool. Well, you need a funnel to be able to get that message out to the marketplace. And so we created customers from people, and that's kind of the second phase. And I don't think most people ever get to that where they're in the phase of creating customers. They're getting the low hanging fruit, the early adopters, and then that's the business, and they hit the ceiling and they never get past it. And it's realizing the next phase is like, okay, how do I create customers? How do I create the desire so that they will come from where they are and come to the next phase? And I feel like just from my standpoint, like we just finished, like we're kind of at the end of the early adopter phase, and we're now making the leap to like the early majority, which for me, this is like my big challenge is crossing the chasm. We can talk about it later if we want to, but like that's the next phase that I'm in. And most people never, it's taken us 6 years to get to the point where we're done with that phase and moving to across the chasm, which is scary and exciting.
That's kind of what I want to end on, actually. So, cool. But I want to interject really quick here. This is a very interesting Eugene Schwartz lesson that I think is quite apropos to what you're talking about. And you remember, the audience awareness scale, right? Yes. So he's got 2 things in there, the audience sophistication scale and the audience awareness level. And the audience awareness level goes all the way from like problem unaware, right? So actually I should put, So problem unaware. So imagine, you got a guy who is living in the Aboriginal bush and he doesn't even know that there is such a thing as phones. And you're like, hey, here's an iPhone. Well, he's not even aware that he has the problem that he doesn't have a phone, right? And then you got guys who are problem aware, and then you got solution aware, and then it goes all the way up to most aware, right? Which is like a guy who's like, hey, all you have to do is tell me that there's the new iPhone coming out.
I'm in.
and right, I'm camping out. Like I'm going to be in front of the iPhone store for 2 weeks so I can be first, right? So as Russell was changing, he was dealing with guys who were sort of like, solution aware and sometimes even problem aware. But as he was expanding his marketplace, he had to kind of reach out to these other areas. But what you have to also understand is that as you go across this whole spectrum, this area is almost always where the biggest money is, but it's the hardest market to talk to because the messaging is so much more difficult.
Yeah, like each step in that, like it's because people are like, well, how do you shift it? And like it's the words, it's like the language. I remember Dean Graziosi called me one day. He's like, this is the weirdest thing. He's like, I'm at my wife's hairdresser, and the hairdresser starts talking about this thing called ClickFunnels. And he's like, calls me, he's like, you've done something nobody else has ever done because my hairdresser is talking about your company right now. But it's like, again, if I walk to hairdresser, like, do you want a funnel? They're like, for my hair? Like, how does that work? It's like, no, we had to speak differently to those audiences. And as we go further out to different audiences, we change our language patterns because we have to speak to them in a way that they understand. And then we bridge the gap, right? Then we take them through a bridge that helps them understand, like, oh, that means funnel, and this is why you need that thing. And that's part of it. So much fun.
They're not even going to know what a funnel is. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. By the way, another really interesting book people can read. So sort of like a spiritual sequel to Breakthrough Advertising was one written by, some of the guys at high level in Agora called Great Leads. And they talk about, it's actually a fantastic book. And it shows you 6 different ways to talk about those different those different audience awareness levels. Very, very good read for people. Okay, now, so this one is, I know I want to get into the thing that you talk about crossing the chasm. And I think that's a nice one to end on here. And actually, because I wrote it as your plan to reach the $1 billion level. And I think that's kind of the same question, really, right? So, but before we get to that, I want to ask you what your 3 biggest personal lessons were in this journey, in this entrepreneurial journey. And you can even talk about some of your sports stuff too, because I know some of that applies. Yeah. Right. So what would you say those are?
Man, I would say to begin with is like entrepreneurship, like building a business is like the best personal development seminar you'll ever go to. Like all your problems get like shoved in your face and it gets bigger and bigger. It's like,
and you deal with it or you go broke.
Oh yeah. It's tough. But what's cool about business too, it's kind of like, I have a lot of friends who are having their first baby right now. And I remember our first babies came and we got 5 kids now, but when they first come, you're so scared. Like, what am I gonna do? The baby shows up. You're freaking out. All of a sudden, the baby comes out and it sits there and it sleeps for 18 hours a day. You're like, oh, it's just sitting there. Like, okay, this isn't that bad, And then it starts growing and growing. And what's interesting is that your capacity to handle a baby grows as the baby grows, right? And so right now, I've got my twins are 14 years old, and it's like, man, they stress us out. Teenagers are so much harder. But it's like, if they would have came out at 14-year-olds, like it would have crushed us. We would have been destroyed because we weren't prepared, right? But our capacity to handle the problems grew as the kids grew. And I think, I look at like the stuff I deal with on a daily basis right now, like 6 years ago would have destroyed me. Like I'm so grateful that, that I had 6 years to grow in capacity to handle the stuff. Like, I mean, it's ridiculous, but that's why business is so much fun too. And it's exciting. So, what was the question again?
So the 3 biggest personal lessons that you've learned along the way. And again, this could be from your sports career, from your parenting, and from your entrepreneurial journey, because I think they're all related. As you said, business is the best personal development seminar you could possibly attend. These things are not unrelated. They are all, it's all one life, right? And things that I learned in the military definitely applied, to my life and business. And I'm sure things that you learn in the sporting world and in parenting have also applied to business as well. So it sounds like the first one is that you had to learn how to grow along with the challenges, because the challenges are not going to get easier. They're actually, by definition in life, going to get more difficult. And I think, let's just be really frank and blunt with everybody listening. Look, we all age, people. We all age. That means that baked in to the formula for life itself is increasing difficulty, no matter what. And if you think you're going to insulate yourself in some bubble, everybody has this, they get into entrepreneurialism saying, well, what's going to happen is I'm going to make a whole bunch of money, then I'm going to sit on a beach, sipping umbrella drinks, and all my problems are going to go away. Well, guess what's going to happen? You do that, and I tried there. Here's what happened. I got fat, sick, and I became this horrible, disgusting person that I was not proud of, and I was going to die if I carried on with that path. This is the way the universe is designed, guys. It's designed to continue to get more difficult and to challenge you more. Would you agree with that?
100%. Unless, and some people not, because they cave and they go and they sit and watch TV and they just like, I'm going to tap out, and they sedate themselves so they don't hear the, the voice, the calling, whatever it is, it's like pulling you, right? Because I think all humans have that. I think it's inherent from our creator that like there's this thing that like pulls us to want to do more, and like we want to contribute, and like we have this thing. And but the majority of people they try to sedate it, right? They say it with TV, with drugs, with alcohol, with pornography, whatever it is, to get that noise out, because there's pain with that. Like man, it is painful to walk out. Like and I'll tell a story that maybe this kind of ties into the second one, but we were about a year into ClickFunnels, and this is all of our first rodeo. Like, it was Todd's first time building an app this big and all these things. And I remember when we first built it, he's like, I'm pretty sure that the way I built it will handle about 10,000 customers. And we thought maybe that'll take, a couple of years. And within a year we were at 10,000 customers. And sure enough, like about a year in, like things start happening, and like the site would go down for half an hour, and then like they get it back up, and then like all these problems and all these things. And it was just like so much stress. And I remember I got asked to speak in London to talk about ClickFunnels. So my wife, my kids, my family, we fly to London. As soon as we land at the airport, I get out and I'm trying to get my phone connected and get a SIM card and whatever. As soon as it gets in, like my phone is just like on fire from and it's all these people who I knew, and I thought they were my friends, but as soon as ClickFunnels went down, and they were not they want like pitchforks were out, they were ready to kill me. And I'm like, I don't know what's happening. And so I remember I messaged Todd, and I'm like, what happened? He's like, we've been down for 2 hours. He's like, we can't figure it out. He's like, if we're able to recover from this, then I don't know, something. But I just remember him saying if, and I was like, wait, if? It wasn't like when, it was like if. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I don't even know how to deal with this. And like,
I've been there.
We're in a car and we're taking kids to the hotel, and they're like all excited because we're in London. And I'm like stressing out, like, I don't know what to do. And finally get to the hotel, and we're talking, and everything's still down on like Facebook, and like everyone's like literal death threats. Like, it's crazy, like how crazy people get, and just everywhere. And all I wanted to do was like, and I'm a Mormon, so there's not many things that we can do to sedate. Like, let's go get some ice cream. Like, I don't know anything, right? And I was like, oh, what do we do? And I remember that moment, I was just like, I just want to hide. But I was like, I don't think that's the right, I don't know. I don't think that's the right thing. I think I need to talk about this, and I shouldn't like act like it's okay, because it's not. Like, and so I decided. So I went to our Facebook group at the time. I think it's still archived in there. You probably find it. But I did this video from the hotel room, and I was like, ClickFunnels is down, and it is not acceptable. And I am pissed at myself. I'm pissed at my team. We're all pissed. Like this is not okay. And like, I just went out, like, all my sites are down. I'm losing money. You're losing money. I understand it. It's not fair to you. It's not fair. Like, and I just owned it publicly, live streaming. And it was scary. I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm gonna keep you guys apprised, but we are doing everything we can. And it is not acceptable. And I am so sorry. And we're going to fix this. And I just led with that, and then got Facebook Live, and then probably bawled my eyes out, like, I don't know if we're gonna fix this, like, and luckily I've got an amazing team back home, and they're killing themselves. Awesome. It'll be a good chapter in the Bootstrap book someday. But everything went on, but it took about 8 hours, and they got it back up. And I remember after it got back up, and it was, it got stable. Then we're just like, oh no, what's going to be the damage from this and the fallout? And I remember, we get graphs every day of like how many people signed up, how many people leave, like just, all those kind of numbers. And man, during that thing, like our number of cancellations, almost non-noticeable. Like, and I was just like, I can't, like, if we went the other way around and hid behind it, people wouldn't trust, like who knows how, like, what would happen. And that was just such a good learning moment for me. Like, we can't hide behind stuff, like, in today's world. Like, we just have to come out front. And so, like, that was a year in. And then luckily, from that point, we had some other good partners who came on, like Ryan Montgomery, who came and like helped us stabilize things and figure out all these things. And it's been pretty stable since then. But like, it's just those things, that you learn of, like, don't hide, like, it's, don't sedate. And I think in all aspects of life, that's like a lesson of, like, don't, like as soon as the coming gets hard, like, man, your brain's going to be looking for a million different ways to say no, or like, I don't want to go that way. No. And like, man, everything good always comes from like going to the eye of the storm and pushing through it. And even though the pain seems like, if I sedate, or if I check out, it's going to be good, but it's not a way to live life. Anyway.
So, dude, it's funny you say that. I was just shooting a video about exactly that, about how everybody is kind of opiating themselves these days, through, the dopamine hits of social, or, whatever it is. I mean, everybody's got their drug of choice now. Again, I mean, you named a lot of them, binge watching, pornography. I mean, actual hardcore drugs. I mean, there are people now, there's so many people that are hooked on fentanyl and heroin combinations. And I mean, it's a really ugly cocktail of what's going on. And I want to kind of interject and maybe posit what I think another third lesson is for you. I'm actually going to ask you a question. Were you raised in Mormonism, or did you choose to convert?
I was definitely raised in it, but I also had a very definite point where I chose it. There, at least for me, I think there's always a time when the storm comes and you got to decide what you really believe. Definitely had that. So yes and yes.
And I would say, I would just kind of hypothesize that played a huge role in your personal development, because you guys are not allowed to involve yourselves in any of those sedation methodologies. They encourage a very morally upright life. And I have to say, being, a veteran of the military intelligence community, I actually got to know a lot of Mormons, because Mormons go out there and they get their language training as missionaries. So there are a lot of Mormons in the military intelligence community. And I got to say, almost all of the Mormons that I worked with were really solid dudes who were just, genuine, sincere people, who wanted to live their life correctly and, and legitimately wanted to be kind to people. And I know you got people like Bill Maher out there, saying all kinds of really nasty things about Mormonism, calling it a cult and stuff like that. But my experience with Mormons has been nothing but very positive. Yeah. And it would seem to me that your choice to really, even though you were raised in it, to decide to take that on very seriously must have also been very pivotal for you in your personal growth.
100%. So, I mean, you think about I did go on a mission for 2 years for the church, and I went when I was 19 years old, which is typically for most people, that's the time when you're in college, you're partying, you're drinking, you're thinking all about yourself, and you go out there on your mission, and you can't do anything for yourself. You get a name tag where literally I was Elder Brunson. My name is gone. I'm not even and you're out there every day serving other people during typically the most selfish time in someone's life. And for 2 years, that's the lens you look at things. When you come home, and I always tell people I'm so grateful I made money after a mission, because who knows what would happen, and both of us have friends that made a lot of money really young and it destroyed them. And so it's
definitely.
It's just super grateful that I had that lens to, I don't know, a lens of learning how to serve people before yourself, which is, unfortunately, most people don't have that opportunity. And, on a mission, you're kind of forced into it, and you learn to love it. So, yeah.
Well, it's funny for me, I went through, I was, even though my family was Catholic, I was kind of raised around atheist agnostics. I became, sort of what I would call now a pantheistic spiritualist. But over time, I've become more and more, rigid in that. I've explored, all of the different world's religions. And the one thing, I haven't decided yet if I'm going to settle in any location. I still need to listen to your Mormon apologetics video that you made. I'm super curious about that. I need to make a point of hearing it, because I'm open to it. I'm open to it. And when I see people who are living a life that represents, genuine service for other people. I don't know if you ever heard of this guy, Father Gregory, who has this thing called Homeboys Bakery. And he was giving, and basically what he does, he takes these kids who were, they were in prison, and he gives them jobs at a bakery and then helps teach them how to be decent people. Mm-hmm. And I saw that, and man, you can't help but get choked up when you hear about something like that, man, because when you see somebody living their life that way, and when you know what the cost of living your life the other way is, it makes you really take those kind of things seriously. And even though religion gets a bad rap, because there's a lot of crazy stuff happening in organized religion, the notion that sin, however you want to label that, destroys your life is an observable phenomenon, man. You can see it. When you do all of the things that you're, quote unquote, not supposed to do, and all of the religions of the world tell you not to do a lot of the same things. And when you see what happens to people who live their life that way and they think they can get away with it, right? And then you see what happens to people who live there. And I'm talking about people who are, like the weak, I'm trying to be a nice guy as a way to manipulate people. That's a bullshit thing that some people do, right? I'm talking about guys who are like, hey, I'm going to make myself a strong person and I'm going to do good in the world. Though when I see people like that, I'm like, that is the path that we all need to be walking down. And the more of us do that, the better the world's going to be.
Yeah. I had someone recently tell me that, learn about like my beliefs and stuff but like, man, that must be really, really hard. And then at the same time, I looked at their life and I was like looking at the path they've gone on, and not to judge them all, but I'm like, that seems so much harder. Like,
yeah,
I don't know, like maybe, but I'm grateful for the path and I'm going to stay on it. So
good for you, man. Good for you, dude. I'm blessed to see your example because, you're yet another person I can look at and say, hey, here's a guy, and your life is harder than mine, man. Your company is doing way more volume than mine right now. You have kids to manage. You do all these extra things on top of it, and I'm like, man, I want to learn how Russell is managing all of this stuff. You know what I mean? Because you're younger than I am, but you figured some things out that I haven't figured out. I want to learn that, and I'm a moron if I don't learn it, right? This is where the egolessness has to come in. If you want to be better and better and better, if you want to truly achieve greatness, you got to be really straight with yourself about what you can and can't do. So let's kind of tie this up now with this crossing the chasm thing, man. Yeah. This is, I don't know if this is something that could be covered briefly, because I imagine it's going to be a pretty complex thing, but what can you say about that?
Yeah, and I'll tell you some of my thoughts. I don't know all the answers yet. We're on that journey right now.
Good answer. Good answer.
Yeah, and it's fun though, because it's like for me, it's been interesting as I've gone on this journey too. And maybe this ties back to the last question as well. But like, and I'll tie back to sports. Like when I was wrestling for a long time, like it was me. I was the all-star. Right? I was out there wrestling. It was my thing. I got my hand raised. I loved it. And now that I'm older and I've got kids now, like my kids wrestle, and like. It's hard. The transition from like all-star to coach is really painful, right? Because it's like, I want to be on the mat, like, they're doing things wrong. And at first it's really painful. And then eventually, like for me, my kids, it's my twins' third year in wrestling. And this year was like so rewarding because the stuff we've been working on, they're finally getting it. And like to see them get their hand raised actually felt better than my own hand raised, which is weird. Cause I was like, that's been the great thing of my life is getting my own hand raised. And with business was similar because like the first 2 years of ClickFunnels, like I was the all-star, like people are like, how big was your funnel building team? Like, it was me. I built the funnels. I wrote the sales presentation. Like, Todd was doing the software. I was doing everything else. And I was the all-star. Like, I'm doing the webinars. I'm flying around the world. I'm speaking. I'm doing something. My hands getting raised over and over and over again. And as we started growing, it started getting harder and harder for me to handle that, right? And I remember 3 years ago, I was like this spot where it's just like the pressure was so much. And I was just like at a breaking point. I'm like, I don't know what to do this. And I can't. I remember where I was at. It was some other conversation, but the thought that popped in my head was like, you have to transition from being the all-star to being the coach. Like the time I'd hired a couple people and they would go, they'd write copy for me or they'd build a funnel for me and like they do it and I felt like it was like Michael Jordan, like there are people goes up to shoot a shot and he's like, I can shoot there, grab it and just dunk on him, right? And I felt like I was doing that. Like my team would come in, they get them like, this sucks. I go and delete it all and rewrite it and fix it all and like, I'm an all-star. Like, look how good I am. And it was holding me back and them back and everything. And I was like, I have to make this transition to being the coach, right? So that was the whole second phase was like, and again, it's hard, but now I'm looking at my team now. My team's getting so good and like they're producing stuff and they're creating without me. And it's like the same thing. Like now they launch something. I'm like, that like, it's same thing. Like it feels better getting your hand raised when your team's doing it now. It's interesting.
Well, you've got a great model really quick. I just want to interject from wrestling. Dan Gable was kind of seen as the greatest wrestler of all time. And then now he's kind of universally recognized as the greatest coach of all time as well, across all sports, right? There are very few people who would deny that Dan Gable, is the best coach of any sport of all time, right?
It's hard. Like think about how many people like making the jump from that, like how many great athletes never become good coaches. You know what I mean? Like and I think, a lot of it is the ego, right? It's been really hard for me at both coaching my kids and then coaching the team, like there's this ego thing. You're just like, I can do it better or whatever. And it's like, it's so hard. And so anyone that can make that transition from all-star to coach, like I have so much respect for them because it takes a lot.
Ego strength, man. Because I tell you, the ego battle is probably, that's the battle, right? Because the ego kind of drives you. That pride drives you so much in the beginning.
It's the fuel initially. It's the reason why I want your hand raised. Like the ego's the driving force initially, and then it becomes the thing that holds you back in the next phase. You're like, what? Like you were such a great friend over here. Now you're screwing me over. What just happened?
Well, this is the genius of the design of the universe, right? It's like every time we think we've got it figured out, it's like, nope, you don't. Because, whatever designed this, whatever your cosmology of the universe is, call it God or whatever, is infinitely smarter than you are. And it's going to come up with so many ways to trick you and keep you off balance that every time you think you got it dialed in, there's going to be a new challenge that's going to come up. And you have to love that. It's kind of beautiful, right? Because it's what keeps life interesting. It would be so dull without it.
Yeah, it's so much fun. So fun. And now it's funny for me because I feel like now the team's been doing good. Now the next phase is this crossing the chasm. So I've been having my core team all read this right now. We're all geeking out on it because it's fascinating. You start learning. And I pulled it. If you just Google like crossing the chasm graph, you'll see like a graph of the 5 phases, like the innovators, the early adopters, and there's this big chasm. And on the other side is like the early majority. And that's where like the majority of business, like that's where you go from like 100 millions to billions is getting the early majority. But there's a chasm because you have to shift everything. Like it's hard for me because it's like the art that we use to get the innovators and the early adopters like repels the people on the other side of the chasm. It's like the funnels don't work over there. The messaging doesn't work over there. How we structure it's like, oh, do we really want to do that thing? But it's like, yeah, like that's the next phase. Otherwise we're just going to hang out where we're at forever. Right. And we always say good's the enemy of great, right? Like we're doing good. Like, and I want to, oh yeah, there's a perfect example of the graph right there. Yes. The big scary. Yeah. This is the big scary chasm. Yes. And so for us, like that's the next stage, like the early majority. If you look at my business, right? Like the innovators were like the people, the internet marketers who understood funnels. Like they were the first group. Next were early adopters. These for me are like the influencers, the creators, the experts. Like those are the next phase where they were like, they're the people that are already like, they're creating stuff, and we're saying, here's how to get your creative message out. And so they've been really easy to become early adopters. But the early majority are the business owners. It's the chiropractors, the dentists, the LASIK surgeon, like that's where the majority of, like existing businesses need funnels. Like how do we make this mainstream? How do we get to that next tier? And like, and it's, there's some that's bled into that, but for us to make that strategic move, it's hard because the dentist doesn't build their own funnels, right? The person who wrote the book or does the course, whatever's typically like, they're the CEO and the marketer. And so like, they're loving this stuff because they'll spend the time to learn the strategy, do the thing. Over here, they're a dentist who wants more dental clients, right? Or they're the restaurant who want, like, they're not marketers. They're not going to learn marketing. They just want the tool. It's like, we have to restructure so much of like how the software alone needs to be rebuilt differently to be able to handle that next phase. The marketing, it's literally like, it's a big rebuild. And so there's fear, there's excitement, there's kind of that thing. And we're testing a lot of things on a small scale to kind of figure out pieces of it. But that's the next phase for us. So
that's beautiful, dude. That was a fantastic example or a fantastic answer. I don't think you could give a more concise, better answer than that because you don't know. It is a big, scary chasm and you guys are about to cross it, but you have some clues though. That looking at, just going back to good old fashioned Eugene Schwartz and looking at the tools that he gave us for, changing the messaging. I think a lot of your answers are going to be found there. Listen, do you have a couple minutes for a few questions? We got tons of them, but I know we've been going a little while. Yeah. All right. So a lady here named Rise of Truth, she says, Dan Gable coached at my alma mater. Have you ever listened to him talk about the letter to his mother wrote to him while he was attending college? Pretty awesome.
I have not, but now I'm going to look that up. That's fascinating. Yeah, for those who don't know, Dan Gable's like the Michael Jordan of wrestling. He's a legend.
Right.
I took a snapshot because I'm going to go look up the letter now. That's actually really cool.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious about that too. Well, it's funny. It reminds me of how, when Edison was a very young man, his school wrote him his mother a letter saying, "Hey, your son is basically not teachable. He's not smart enough to be in school." But then she said, "Oh, I got a letter from school, and what I read to them was that you're too smart to be in school, so you have to be homeschooled." And then later on in life, after he had achieved all of this, he saw that original letter, and it just ripped him to shreds, because he realized how much his mom sacrificed and how much her belief in him changed his own perception of himself. And that's such a profound lesson, man, because if we can all just change our belief in ourselves a little bit, we're all capable of so much more than we're taught to believe. And while we're opiating ourselves with all this crap on TV, and we're all involved in all of our different distractions, these things are also subtly weakening us and programming us with the message that, hey, there's this wonderful life that other people are watching or are living on the other side of the screen, but that's not for you. You're meant to be in this little box where you're the observer of everything on the screen while you stuff your face with Haagen-Dazs and take more fentanyl. I mean, that's literally what's happening to a lot of society right now. And I think what we've got to do to kind of turn society around before it destroys itself is to get people to understand that we're all capable of so much more than we've been taught that we're capable of. And the more people we can reach with that message, I think the better hope humanity has. Kenneth Kern-Sanyu had a really interesting question. Mm-hmm. He was talking about basically, I'm not going to phrase it the way he did. He phrased it in kind of a slightly rude way. No offense, Kenneth, but I don't know what you meant by the way you phrased it. But the question you asked at the end was very important. But he's talking about how you're getting out there all the time. You don't see this on the queue here. This is from another thread I started where I a couple days ago I asked people to just say, "Hey, tell me what your questions are for Russell." And basically his question was, with you being out there so much and being so visible now, how do you deal with online haters?
Oh, man. When I first got started, back about the time I met you initially, that's the first time I started getting hate. So it's been, 15, 16 years ago when that first started. And it was really hard back then. I would see something and it would put me out for 3 or 4 days where I sit there just depressed or upset or whatever. And it was really, really hard. And I remember a couple things that helped me. One thing I remember Dan Kennedy said, if you haven't offended someone by noon each day and you're not marketing hard enough. And that was this weird release to me. I'm like, not that I don't know if I really believe that, but it gave me a little permission. And the more I've seen the hate, the more I realize it's people that aren't happy with themselves. I try not to look at it because it does. If I read something, it'll mess me up for a while. But for the most part, when people, especially on ads, you get beat up in the ads. You get, there's just the more you're visible, the more that stuff happens. The hard thing for me is when there's people that you've helped or you love or you respect or whatever, and that doesn't happen often. But when those are the ones that are more brutal. You know what I mean? We're just I've had a couple people that I've spent a lot of time developing and helping in success. And then they seem like sometimes they're the ones that come back the hardest. And you're just like, seriously?
Yeah.
I know you've
it's such a way to help them for free, right? Yeah.
Those ones hurt the most. For the most part, people that are just posting stuff, I think it's funny at this point. It doesn't bother me at all. But I know my wife just started her first podcast, which is so far out of her comfort zone. She's very, keeps to herself. And so she's getting out, people are commenting and things are happening. And it's the first time I'm remembering, I forget how hard that can be. In fact, it was interesting. I did, we talked about earlier. I have a podcast, the Book of Mormon podcast. And it's funny because I tell people all the time, go and publish. But then I started publishing that. And I had all sorts of things. It's I still do. I don't publish that near as much as I want to because I get the fear again because it's I don't know. On the marketing side, I can take it. I go for it. Take your best shot. But and other things you that are not as comfortable as talking about or things you really hold sacred or dear or whatever. It's a little harder. But when all said and done, I think that that God's created these platforms for us to share. And if we're not willing to share, then he'll give the ability, the gifts, the ideas, whatever, to other people. And so I think it's just, we've all been entrusted a lot. So it's just like, be willing to share it, even if you get beat up a little bit along the way. So anyway.
That's right. Well, yeah. Oh, dude. Well, I have many short stories along those lines I could share. It's something I've had to learn, the hard way. But you have to give up, and you have to trust a little bit. I mean, having so many things. I took it very personally, along the way, when a lot of people that I helped even like straight ripped stuff off, or like even like turned around and did nasty moves behind my back and stuff like that. And then I was kind of like, you know what? Well, here's the thing. I can look at this through another lens. I can say for whatever reason, I've been gifted with the ability to get these ideas and to be a conduit for these ideas. And I'm grateful that conduit is still open, and I think that if I keep that channel open and keep giving it, it's going to keep coming. And what I need to focus on is the infinite abundance of that source of that inspiration, rather than like, oh man, if I had patented the tracking pixel, this is the things people come up to me. They're like, Mark, how come you didn't patent ebooks or the tracking pixel? Like, doesn't that make you so mad? And I'm like, not really, because think about it, right? Like, let's say I had patented the tracking pixel, right? They would have probably came up with some other very similar technology, called it something else. Now, everybody's still, even though it's a JS file, they still call them tracking pixels, and I get to be known forevermore as the inventor of the tracking pixel, right? So I mean, maybe it wouldn't have worked out the same way had I patented it, right? Maybe it would have gone a totally different way. Maybe it was actually the best possible way for things to turn out for me, So I'm learning how to change my orientation about that. But I want to ask you something about this. Do you ever give online haters a little sass when they, because I've experimented with this a bit over the last couple of years. I got to say, normally for a while, I was just like, all right, just be kind to everybody. But then I was like, you know what, man, some of these people need a little bit of a slap back every now and then. And I started getting a little bit more sassy over the last couple of years. And how about you? Have you experimented with that?
Oh, I it's funny because I would say since ClickFunnels come out, there's been probably 3 or 4 times where I just like you just snap and your like thumbs are flying on your phone. You're like, oh, and you post it, and I can honestly say every time I've done that, I've regretted it. And it's now I look at this with ClickFunnels as well. Like, it's not just me. Like, everything I say is an extension of my partner Todd and my other partners and my employees. Yeah. So I was, especially like, there's this one dude, I'm not gonna say his name, but somebody who I had a lot of respect for. We've never had any, like, it's just weird. Like, we've never really communicated, and I thought we were. We've communicated a little bit, but I thought I assumed we were friends. We're like peers, and he starts going off on his own personal wall about like aggressively like tearing me down. I'm like, yeah, so confusing, and like, yeah. Anyway, so I said some things I probably shouldn't have. It's tough, especially like the wrestler in me, because like, man, if you say it to my face, we are going like please come. Yeah. Right. It's not posted publicly for everyone to see the fight, but like we can have that fight right here anytime.
Because you'd rip their limbs off their torso.
Oh, I know. It's so, yeah, it's frustrating, but and all said and done, it's just like, it's hard.
I'll tell you the distinction I have on this, right? So if I reply out of anger, I always regret it. But sometimes if I come back with like just a really like an IDGAF, attitude zinger that just like puts them in their place, it's that one. I'm like, nah, I don't regret that, because you totally had it coming, and they shut up, right? And then it teaches them like, okay, man, if you get
back,
yeah, I mean, whatever people think. I know I'm going to say something very divisive here, and I'm not going to get into politics or anything, but whatever people think about Trump, whether they hate him or love him, and it seems to be a completely divisive thing. Like, he's not there. Nobody's like in the middle of. I think I'm like the only guy on the planet who's like, I don't really have an opinion. I can look at him through a million different lenses. You know what I mean? There's so many ways to look at what he does, right? But one thing that you have to recognize about the guy is that when somebody punches him, he punches back hard, right?
And fast. It's like
and fast. Yeah, and it makes people hesitate. They're like, I don't know if I can tangle with this dude, right? so it's an interesting thing to observe. I don't know if there's any one right way. All right, we've been going a while.
I love your Facebook comments because you always post these questions that are like, you can tell you're like stirring the pot a little bit. Like, let's just see what both sides are going to say to this question. And you're always, I always read I never comment because I'm always like, I don't know if I have strong opinion one way or the other to like defend anything. But I love reading.
Same. Well, I see and by the way, I'll just say people misunderstand. Like they think I'm doing this for engagement bait. And it's like, dude, if I was trying to game Facebook for marketing, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing on Facebook. I mean, I see what I do as more or less of a public service. I feel like what I'm doing out there is kind of like trying to teach people like, man, stop being so rigid about your view of reality because you don't know, man. You don't know. And I'm trying to get people to like be okay with disagreeing with other people. And I mean, that's been sort of like my whole mission on social media is to create an environment where people can be like, hey, let's see if we can like actually look at things dispassionately and look at them through somebody else's eyes. And, and maybe say to ourselves, you know what, I see this completely differently from that other guy, but I don't have to hate this dude. Like he sees it differently from me. We can still get along. This has been a quixotic battle for me. I don't think I've succeeded in this mission. I don't know how much longer it's going to last. I think I'm probably going to change up my my approach on it. Hey, listen, let me end on one last question. I don't know if this is one you're going to want to ask, but it's from a mutual friend of ours. You remember Brad Callen, yeah?
I love Brad. Yep.
I love Brad too, man. He is a great dude. And he asked a question that I don't know if you're going to want to answer because it's some very personal questions about numbers. Okay. All right. So he says, posted this earlier and also mentioned directly to him, but having him give you some tangible numbers on ClickFunnels. Things like total number of free trial users. And by the way, I don't think I would answer this question if I were Russell. Okay. If somebody were to ask me this about Simpleology, I don't think I would answer. So I'm very, and guys, if Russell refuses to answer, do not fault him because he is under no obligation to answer this question to anybody.
Especially
and I'm kind of
just kidding.
Yeah, especially Brad. No, we love Brad. Man, Brad is an awesome dude. All right. So things like total number of trial users they get per day, what percentage of those stick and are billed at least once, what the average member length is, what the churn rate is, what the refund rate is. That would really help those of us building software businesses to know what numbers we need to hit monthly to reach ClickFunnels level revenues and valuation. Assuming Russell wouldn't know exact numbers off the top of his head, but maybe some broad guesses, the more actual data of any sort of numbers metrics he can give would be great for those that have been at this for a while and also help broaden the mindset and goal setting on what's possible. And then he said, P.S. anything not covered in his books would also be ideal. I'll answer the P.S. Wait for the 2 sequels coming out here pretty soon. Right.
I'll try to add. I mean, I don't know the number off my head. I'm not a big data guy. I'm more the creative side, so some of my partners can answer a lot of it better than me. But I'll share some stuff I think will be helpful and motivating for people because I remember when we launched ClickFunnels, the event I told you at the very beginning where I did the first presentation, I was like, oh my gosh, we got the message right. It was kind of a funny event because they had a you could buy a booth and there was like it was a hallway like half the size of the room I'm in right now, and there were only 4 people that bought booths. ClickFunnels had our very first booth ever, and then Lead Pages had a booth, and then 2 other people, and like this side of the hall was Lead Pages, and this side was ClickFunnels. We were almost touching, and like we were like that was our big competitor when we first got started. And I remember I was just like, it was really funny because our banner ad said, "Can your landing page software do this?" and had a picture of a funnel, and then right there it was like landing page software. Anyway, it was really funny. But at that event, I remember Clay Collins, who I don't know if he still owns Lead Pages or not, but at the time he owned it. I think he still anyway, but he told Mike Philsame, I think, I don't remember the exact numbers, but I think he said like he told me there's like 200 or maybe 300 signups a day that were happening. And I remember he told me that, and I was like, "There's no way that's possible." I remember thinking that, and I sat home thinking forever, like, how do you get 200-300 signups a day consistently every single day? And that number drove me crazy. But then it became like my KPI, like, okay, how many did we get a day? Like I need to know. And it was like 3, and there was like, 5, but because, anything you track, it starts to grow. And so we kept looking at it. And so for me, that became the number to look at, because I was like, couldn't figure out how he was doing it. And so I can give you some, again, basically right now we get about 1,500 people a day that go to ClickFunnels.com and start the trial, which is step 1, which basically pick a name and a username. And then from that, step 2 is where they put in a credit card, and about half of those will put in a credit card. So we're getting, I don't know, 700-800 paid, or not paid, but credit card trials a day. They're coming into the platform. Some days are higher. Some days we get 1,000. Some days it's 500 or 600, but pretty consistently it's around 1,500 free leads a day, and then again a little more than half actually finish credit card. And that's about all the numbers I really know off the top of my head. I know that we are. It's interesting at this point in the game, like that those people come whether we're buying a lot of ads or not. The game now on our side is the churn stuff, because every percentage of churn, like we drop churn right now by 1%, that's an extra $20 million a year revenue to the bottom line by 1%. And so it's like, that's the game right now. It's like, how do we simplify the software? How do we change the lead flow? How do we pre-frame it better? Like there's so many things that it's a fun game, and that number's always fluctuating, and we're always like chopping it down by like a fourth of a point, half a, and so I don't know what it is right now off the top of my head, but I do know like that's the number. Like that matters more right now than new leads, because like I said, 0.5% to 1%, it changes. Like it's a big deal.
And by the way, so to wrap this up, I just want to tell Brad, the answer Russell just gave you is actually better than specific numbers that he could have given you. Why? Because he's teaching you the secret formula for what to look at, right? It doesn't matter how your numbers stack up to some other company. What matters is the improvements that you make to your numbers right now. That's the only thing that really, really matters. And it's, sometimes, competition is a good way to motivate yourself, but it's not the best way to improve yourself, because if you're looking at the other guy, you're not watching your own lane, right? You need to be watching your own lane. You need to be improving your game. Yeah, check out the other guy's numbers from time to time to kind of see how you're doing, but really 99% of your focus needs to be on, how do I improve me? How do I improve, what's going on inside my company? And usually, by the way, how to improve what's going on inside in your company comes down to improving what's going on inside you. All right, listen, Russell, I know I've been keeping you up late, and I know you got kids to take care of, and you got a company to go back to tomorrow, and it's getting late, and we are way past your bedtime here. I want to encourage everyone, go to simpleology.com/ClickFunnels free. At the very least, check out the free trial funnel that ClickFunnels that they have there, because Russell has honed that through thousands upon thousands of split tests now, and you guys will see their marketing structure, how they're doing that, how they're retargeting it, how they get you guys back on email, all of that. And also the software itself is absolutely amazing. And I want to encourage everybody as well, if you enjoyed this tonight, if you appreciate the fact that Russell here spent almost 2 hours now giving us some pretty amazing inside information on a business that is actually right about to cross that chasm and start to reach that $1 billion mark. And I can almost guarantee you guys they're going to make it, knowing Russell and knowing how they're doing. If you appreciate what he has delivered tonight, I want you guys to share this far and wide with as many people as possible. If you think this has helped you, let's get this message out to more people. And any comments you guys can put underneath all of this to say thank you to Russell as well. I'm sure he would be very, very appreciative to get that. No matter how well we do, we always want to be appreciated for our contributions. And Russell, I appreciate you very, very much, man. I'm so proud of what you've done, and you have become an inspiration for me. You make me want to be a better person, and you have set a higher bar. And at 51 years of age now, I feel invigorated watching you being so successful, and I'm now, inspired to take my company, to a higher level as well because of what I see you doing. So thank you for that, man.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me on. I had a really good time. I haven't had a chance to do some of this for a long time. I mean, we're always in the thick of it, and we did this late at night, so it would work for me, and I appreciate you letting me do that. But I was going to kind of wrap with just saying it's interesting, like in your life, there's your life's a timeline from you're born and then over here you die, and there's different people that that as you're on this journey that shift your direction a little bit. And, you know, a little shift in direction can be a huge different outcome in different spots. And I'm just honestly so grateful for you, man. I started this journey 17, 18 years ago, and I was floundering and trying to figure things out. Like, you were the guy who literally grabbed me and shifted my direction and completely transformed the trajectory and the future of my life. And anyway, I'll always be grateful for you for that. And anyway, so just want to let you know that, and just grateful that you put in as much time as you have. You know, I think, again, I always talk about with my own tribe, but, you know, I feel like business is a calling from God, and that we've been called to serve a group of customers. And if we do it right, we change their lives. And you definitely changed my life. And so thank you for hearing the call and putting forth the effort and the time. And I know from experience, it's not easy. It's not painful. It's way easier to go sedate and go watch TV and do whatever. And, you know, through those times, I'm sure were hard for you at the beginning of the internet. Before Facebook, you were out there killing yourself and learn this stuff and trailblazing for people like me, so that we could get on your shoulders and learn from you and set our own path. So always be super grateful eternally for you. So thanks for all you've done for my life.
Thank you, man. I'm humbled. All right, everybody, you guys have a beautiful night. I enjoyed this immensely, and Russell, hope to talk. I will see you actually very soon.
You're coming to me. Yeah.
Oh man, that's gonna be awesome. I'm so excited.
I appreciate you coming.
See you in Boise, brother.
See you, everybody.
All right.